type it in. And the person that asks the best question today gets a 6-pack of a Missouri microbrew. So we're going to start it up exactly at 3. All right, please, first of all, if anyone cannot see the screen that has the welcome on the beach, or you cannot hear me, or I'm not coming through clear, please type in now. Now, we are going to record this so that you can get this for future reference. So again, I'm just assuming everybody can see me, and we're going to start up in less than a minute. Okay, it's 3 o'clock on the big dial here, and welcome everybody. It's the June edition of Pints with Pete. I got to thank Scott for the wonderful introduction. I didn't know that I'm the matchmaking guru. But this is a little bit like Loveline here, and unfortunately I'm Drew, and Dr. Drew, and Adam Carolla is not here. So this is the June edition of Pints with Pete. And as you can see right here, this class is going to be about selecting the outside unit. So again, welcome to Pints with Pete, the most relaxing spot at the end of the web, and the June edition. Now we're going to talk about selecting the outside unit. Now this is selecting the outside unit when you use a thermal expansion valve. Now everyone should be aware, and I see Tim that you're attending today, you were at the class earlier this week on the I-Series. Until the I-Series, Unico in its 25-plus year history, and actually we're going on 30 years, we've never made or offered an outside unit or heat pump. And there was a reason behind that. That was done so that you, as either an installer or a distributor, or as a rep, you could recommend the equipment that you're most comfortable with. Now, this was possible with thermal expansion valves. Thermal expansion valves allow us to hook up basically with anyone's equipment. When we go to inverter technology, we use electronic expansion valves, and we use a very sophisticated software program for the two units to communicate with one another. So that will no longer be the case. So when we have the I-Series, I should say, when you use the I-Series, you have to use both the indoor and the outdoor unit from Unico. So that being the case, again, there's a couple of ways that we can do the ratings. Basically, we go off the AHRI ratings for the equipment. We use the AHRI ratings on cooling. A tendency, and I got this number from the Department of Energy, contractors have been kind of in the habit of oversizing the systems, and they've been going as much as 2 to 4 times the capacity of what the system should be. And again, the thing is, a BTU is a BTU. So one of the rules in our industry, this goes back to, I guess, when Willis Carrier was a child, the sensible capacity, and I think you're all familiar with the term sensible capacity and latent capacity. Sensible capacity is the temperature we feel. What we would do is take 1.08 times the CFM of air times the delta T, that is to say the difference between the incoming air and the outgoing air. That would give us our sensible capacity. So when we give you a load calc, when we do jobs, When Victor Carroll does his website, does his load calculation for you, that's done in sensible. So we take that and multiply it by 1.3 or divide by 0.70. Now, we've always had a lower sensible heat ratio. We use about a 0.62 ratio. It used to be before the advent of high SEER, the conventional systems also had about a 0.70 sensible heat ratio. That's risen to as high as 8.0 today. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. And I take it that everybody is able to see this okay. And as I say, if there's any problems, I apologize. We'll just keep on moving here. So again, the first thing that you do is select the heat load capacity. And the AHRI ratings, 95 outside, 67 degrees inside. And by the way, guys, I hate to mention this, but there are people out there that they want to keep their house at 65 degrees during the summertime. Well, you need to gently explain, somebody needs to gently explain to them that's not air conditioning anymore. So what we have in the next slide is a capacity chart. Pretty rare that we use these around here. But what we do is we take a vertical line from right here where it says 67 degree wet bulb. We pull this up to our 2.5-ton condensing unit, and that gives us roughly 27,000 BTUs. So that's how we determine the load. Again, don't use this too often. The other part that this chart does is it shows the actual sensible heat ratio. Now that can vary a little bit based upon the condensing unit that you're using. It's somewhere from about 0.6 to about 0.62. In this case right here, you notice the line crossing the sensible heat ratio at 0.61. So it's at 0.61. Again, that's a little bit low for today's units. They're probably a little bit more closer to 6.2 or 0.62 rather. But you are taking out more humidity with Unico. That's a big plus for us just about everywhere. There are a couple of places where they do have dry climate, and we'll talk about that later. So here's a capacity chart for the biggest coil we make, the 4860. Now, in reality, what you have with us is again, a little bit of a philosophy with Craig Messmer, our Director of Engineering. He calls nominal condenser size the size that that manufacturer hopes that system produces. And you can see with us, a 2.5-ton system is actually going to be rated at about 25,000 BTUs. Now, a conventional system matchup is more about 27,000 BTUs. In either case, you're not getting 30,000 BTUs with a 2.5-ton condensing unit. So it's a little bit of a fiction that the industry has agreed upon with these nominal tonnages. And quite frankly, if I'm doing a load calculation and I come out with 24,000 or 25,000 BTUs, I probably just automatically go to a 2.5-ton system so that I don't get that complaint on the 100-plus degree day that they can't keep the house at 68 degrees. So these are your expected, and this is, by the way, in our bulletin 40-40. So there's a wealth of information there. Now, if you guys have been to the other Pints with Pete, you know this is a very important thing with us. And again, I can't emphasize enough, we do have to have the correct airflow over the system. Now, again, what's happened in the industry over the last 20-plus odd years is that we've mandated higher SEER. We've mandated 10 SEER in 1992, and then in, I believe it was 2006, we mandated 13 SEER, and they're looking at still higher SEER. So what that's meant overall as an industry is we have smaller compressors and larger coils. Now, another thing, and again, this is one of these inside things that you wouldn't get unless you were with the manufacturer of equipment, the evaporator coil temperature on a conventional system has risen about 4 degrees. It's gone from around 44 to about 48 degrees. The discharge temperature, which we used to figure when I was going to school 35 years ago to be 30-plus ambient, it's now about 15 to 20-plus ambient. And the big thing people notice is the evaporator coils and the outside unit and the inside unit coils have become much larger, whereas we have stayed the same. And so therefore the sensible heat ratio has risen, we say to about 0.75. It may be a little bit higher than that. Remember, we've only increased our sensible heat ratio very slightly from about 0.58 to 0.62. Our temperature is slightly increased from about 42 degrees to 44 degrees. So again, this kind of brings it home. I don't know how many of you guys were in the industry back in 1983. I don't know, John Slack, if you were out there doing this in 83, but this was a top-of-the-line Carrier Bryant condensing unit. This is a 3-ton condensing unit. And I'm going to show you that because the next slide, now you can see that little boy is all grown up. This is a 20-SEER condensing unit, and you notice it's an enormous condensing unit. That happens to be a 3-ton unit again. If you look down inside there, you'll see this little teeny tiny coil down at the bottom of that. Now, again, Unico's always been a subject of space. We have much smaller spaces. A couple of myths have come up on matching systems. First is you can't use a high-efficiency condenser or heat pump. You absolutely can, and I'll show you a couple of examples of an actual matchup with both a 13 and a 17 SEER rated unit. Second one is Unico decreases the efficiency of the system. Again, SEER is sort of a agreed upon lie. Maybe I'm overstating it a little bit, but it's sort of like the EPA mileage estimates. If you have a Prius and you floor it at every green light, you're not going to get the same efficiency. So you have to look at the overall package, and that's not what the industry has done until now. So again, the anatomy of a SEER rating, we have the model number of both the indoor and the outdoor unit. We rate the airflow. We show what the total capacity is. Now again, none of the manufacturers, Unico included, breaks it down into sensible versus latent. I think everybody knows EER is the amount of energy that you put in to the amount of BTUs you're getting out. That's a true number. SEER is a kind of a blending, the smoothing, what have you. And then finally we come to AHRI type, which with Unico is SDHV. Again, what happens with us with the ratings, and I probably have been through this a million times with most of you, is we have to rate our systems at 1.2 inches of static pressure. Conventional systems are rated at 0.2 of an inch static pressure, which is never going to happen in the field. We do have higher SEERs now with EC motors. The maximum rating we can have is 12.5, and that's with our I series. So again, everything you do, you can check with ahridirectory.org. So this is something we literally had an act of Congress pass last year. I don't expect you to remember this, but we are in Title 10 of the Federal Code of Regulations under Part 430 and subparts 430.2 and 430.32c. So I'm not going to bore you with the verbiage from it, but basically it recognizes by an act of Congress all the benefits that Unico does in terms of delivering the air, in terms of dehumidifying, etc. So again, they only publish total capacity. Again, most homes never have quite enough SHR, enough latent to take out the moisture. This is a little secret that we don't like to talk about. Here you can see this is an actual matchup. You can see Unico hooked up with Lennox, and I only chose Lennox because we probably have the most matchups with Lennox and with any other series. And you can see there's about a total of 85 of these that are on there, matchups with current equipment. So what we have, again, the actual AHRI certificate is available through us. And again, little technical thing. Can you see this? Can you guys see this? I got a question right here. 46 plus years, John. Thank you. I think you just won the longevity award, unless there's somebody else out there. I want to close that right now. But this is an actual rating here. We got a 13 SEER Lennox unit with the Unico 3036. And we're showing that we are actually putting out 28,000 BTUs. Now again, the EER we have is pretty high. It's 9.25. But the way they do the ratings, we only get 11.05 SEER, which again is all we need is 11 SEER. But we're just not going to qualify for the energy rebates as of yet because we do things in a different manner. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse right here, so we're going to move on. Okay. So there's the actual AHRI. If you have a system that's not rated, and there's going to be a lot of them that aren't rated in the AHRI directory, it's just because of lack of manpower. We don't have the manpower to keep track with all the new changes that come out. So if you send us in or just email us a matchup, you want to put down your condensing unit model number, we have a software program in-house that you see this screenshot of it, and we can match up any unit that's out there. So again, it's just a fact that we don't have enough people to keep up with all the changes in the field. So here you have a lab matchup. Here we are with the Lennox XP16 series, which I believe is a two-stage condensing unit, and we are rated on there. So again, we are able to use Unico with a high SEER unit. In fact, just to show you a comparison, a Unico, this was with a Unico 3642. If you hooked it up to a 13 AC42, which is their plain vanilla 13 unit, we got 35,400 BTUs. That same capacity, I mean the same model size, 3.5 tons, with the XC17, which is a 17 SEER unit, we get almost identical. I mean, it's within a rounding error on the BTU output, but the EER and the SEER didn't change very much. So again, you can sell this with a 17 SEER condensing unit. It's just that we're doing things differently. As you saw the size comparison, we have a very small system. So again, with heat pumps, now heat pumps, you size those for the heat loss. And again, the system capacity, what I mean by that is your total system, your Unico system plus your electric heat or your hot water heat. I recommend using auxiliary heat in all cases. For instance, in places like Baltimore, they have very humid winters. They have a long defrost cycle. You can energize, say, 7.5 kW during the defrost cycle. Now, I will say in my own house in St. Louis, with Unico, I've never noticed that cold blow when defrost comes on. So I can only speak for myself, but you just don't notice it there. Although I've had some contractors in several areas that are very adamant on adding electric heat with us. Again, what I do is I use a heat pump with, and I think some of you guys sell this or represent this. I got the ecobee thermostat, and I set the ecobee thermostat to lock out at 30 degrees outside temperature. So I'm using just a plain vanilla heat controller, 13 SEER condensing heat pump unit rather. And then below 30, it shuts off the compressor, shuts off the outside unit, and in my case, it turns on the boiler. And I think we all appreciate, now that it's June, what a brutal winter we went through. I mean, we had probably one of the coldest winters in St. Louis in the last 25, 30 years. Even with that, my January bill showed that 38% of the time I was running the system on heat pump. And power companies have a saying, it relates to COP, or coefficient of performance. You get $3 in energy for every dollar you spend on electricity when you're running a heat pump as a heat pump. Now, when we talk about the I series, we're good down to 5 degrees above. We're still producing somewhere around 2 or 3 COP. And we are still producing heat even as low as 25 below. But again, I recommend emergency heat. Now, there is something with heat pumps that will vary. They call it a cross plot. This refers to the balance point. And the balance point is the level, and this depends mostly on the house and construction, on how tight the house was built. Typically, we used to figure 35 degree outdoor temperature would be where we would lock out the outside unit, and we would bring on the boiler or bring on the electric strip heat. We are using them colder today. There are a number of people that tell me with the new construction, they have no problem running a 22 degree crossover point. But at some point, you do run out of BTUs. So the further north we go, the more essential it is that we have auxiliary heat. One thing, I don't know if anybody is calling in from a dry climate. We really consider this to be high altitude and dry climate. So use Salt Lake City as an example. You have to, this is true across the board, you got to multiply the sensible load by 1.2. And that would also include computer server rooms, which I know are a big user of the ductless mini splits. So again, the I-Series has got its own condensing unit. We'll talk about that in another class. Today was strictly on the Unico. If we do have a high altitude situation, if anybody's calling in from Calgary or Salt Lake City, you don't have 5-ton condensing units with us out there. A 5-ton unit is only going to give you 4 tons. Now, for the rest of the 95% of us who don't live in the mountains or aren't privileged enough to live in the mountains, humidity is a big factor, and that's one of the things that the Unico matchup does very well. So basically, guys, we can use Unico with anyone's equipment. I wanted to do a little poll question here. This is my first time with doing a poll question. I'd like to get an answer from you guys. And again, it's the first time I've used this, so I hope this thing is working. And I'm going to ask you guys, what brand of equipment are you using right now? And I gave you 5 choices there: Broan, Lennox, Carrier, Train, and others. 100% Carrier. Okay, very good. I think Carrier's our winner today. Again, we got a lot of people that use a lot of different equipment with us, and we're not really playing favorites with any brand. So as they say, if your brand out there is Broan, well, I'm going to tell you use Broan. Okay, we got a little bit of a change now on a poll. So we got a nice split between Broan and Carrier, and then we got about 60% using other systems. Now, that was kind of fun, using a poll question like that, and that was my first go-around with using polls. I'm going to be using that a lot more in the future. Other ICP. Okay, well, again, we are friendly to everybody out there. We like everyone, and as I say, that's the beauty of Unico, is we're not interfering with your main line. And that was kind of a conscious decision they made all the way back in 1985. Was to not, so I just closed the poll right there. So that was a conscious decision we did so that we would not be thought of as an interference with your main product line. So that concludes this afternoon's Pints with Pete. Again, I apologize. We had a little glitch with the presentation. I was trying to use 2 screens, and I'll probably never do that again. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys and start asking some questions so that we want to give this 6-pack of beer away. It's a nice, hot, 91-degree day here in St. Louis. We're enjoying the heat and humidity, and I hope the rest of you are too. So let's see if we've got any questions out there. Anything I haven't covered? Any sports-related topics? Okay, we got someone got their hand raised. So let's see who that is. Bob Sluss, you got your hand raised? I'm going to unmute you here for a second. Bob, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just loud and clear, Bob. What's your question?
Fantastic. Okay. So if we have a unit that we want or need an AHRI match for,
yes,
we send you the criteria as far as the model number and so forth of both
absolutely.
The indoor and the outdoor unit, and
yes,
then
sir.
You can make us a certificate?
Yes, we can. We can.
Okay. That's
yeah, in fact, that was one that we did right there. Now, let me just kind of caution you. There may be a couple of them out there that we may not meet 11 SEER with, which doesn't mean you can't use it. It's just that we couldn't generate a certificate with it. I don't find that too often. Most of the 13 SEERs out there, we get a little bit over 11 SEER.
Okay. Now, the criteria to generate a certificate is that it has to meet the 11 SEER?
Yes. For us, for our category, it's SDHV, and there's a couple of other brands that fall under that category. And we literally had an act of Congress last year passed to recognize this. We are in the book, and I gave you the chapter and verse on it. We only need to meet 11 SEER.
Okay.
And that's our 13 SEER.
All right. So I guess if it doesn't meet that, then we cannot get a certificate. So,
right.
And like you said, it still functions. It's just that
it works great.
Now,
in fact, in the old days, back before they had 10 SEER, we worked great with an 8 SEER condensing unit. Like, I don't know if you saw the picture of the old Carrier in 1982. We worked great with those, and you saw how small they were. And again, the thing was, they grew and we stayed the same size.
Correct.
So it didn't really affect your energy bill. I mean, most people care what their electric bill is. I mean, our biggest unit only uses less than 500 watts, so it's a negligible amount. But, you know, I can't rail against it. That's what everybody knows is SEER, and we have to kind of accept reality and say, okay, we're 11 SEER, and it'll probably be anywhere from 11 to 12, depending upon the matchup that you have.
Okay.
All right. I hope that answers your question, Bob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did.
All right. I'm going to put you on mute because we get some real bad feedback on this. Do we have any other questions out there? All right, let's see. Let's see what our next question is. Are the Cardinals going to win the World Series? Yes, Kevin, they will. And I believe we're playing the Cleveland Indians this year. Oh, I'm sorry. Will the Unico system match up with the old 7-inch face packs? Kevin, that's a great question. That's really a PowerPoint of its own. We have a manual, and I got to give Stuart and Tagliata a big shout for this. This is available on that tech.unicosystem.com on matching up older systems with Unico. And basically, Kevin, what you do is you hook it up and use our EC motor. In some cases, because the airflow changed, you may have to change some of the main trunk from 7-inch to 9-inch. But we give you all that on a brochure, and I'll be happy to send you a copy of that if you'd like. As I say, for the rest of you guys, we have that on that tech.unicosystem site, so you can get that any time. And for those of you who might have missed the presentation on tech.unicosystem.com, what we're trying to do is make it so that the homeowners can't get a hold of technical information. So it's not something we're hiding. We're kind of hiding it in plain sight. We have this new website called tech.unicosystem.com that has all of our bulletins on it. It has all of our software on it. It has all of the information that we want a contractor or a wholesaler or a rep to have, but not a homeowner. Do not oversize by 1 ton, nominal or actual. John, you know, the problem is if you make a system too big, and I just kind of went off of our Bulletin 4040, we said don't oversize by a ton. If you get a system that's too big, what will happen will be you get this cave effect where you drop the temperature so fast you don't take the humidity out. Now, it's pretty rare people do that. You'd have to go probably, John, in reality more than about a ton of actual load. So if you're doing a 1,200 square foot house in your market and you put a 5-ton system in there, well, it's not going to dehumidify. Again, most people go the other way. They go too small of a system, but this would be true with the conventional system as well. If you oversize it, then you're not going to be able to take out the humidity, which again, that's a big part of the Unico story is the dehumidification. Okay, let's see if we got any other questions out there. Still got a 6-pack of beer. For you guys that haven't asked me anything, we still have the 6-pack open, so I haven't made my choice yet. So please ask me anything that you need answered. And again, if there's something you forgot, you can always email us. I'm probably not the one to talk to. You probably want to ask. My suggestion would be bill@unicosystem.com. And he is the guy that probably has forgotten more about Unico than anyone else has learned. So, again, apologize about the little glitch with the PowerPoint. I think we're okay with this now. We've got this saved. And we're going to do an interesting class for July. I hope you all stick around for that because we're going to have a guest speaker from Sporland. Okay, one last question. Okay, what's 6 Froton? How about 7/8? John, I got to admit, I don't quite understand your question there. Let me unmute you so if I understand this a little better. John, what's your question now?
Full rated outlet.
Full rated outlet. Okay, they're basing those upon 35 CFM, which is 6 outlets a ton.
Yeah, don't the new air handlers move more air than the old ones?
Well, they're rated at 250 CFM per ton, but we can still dial them down to 200 CFM per ton. Now, what that is, it's a trade-off between more humidity removal at 200 versus more total BTUs at 250.
Yep.
Okay? So it's like everything else in life, it's a trade-off, and in most places, people want the dehumidification. You know, there are some places like Salt Lake City and Denver where they have high altitude and they have a dry climate, but I don't think either one of those describes Washington, D.C. in the summer, do you?
No, where we're running into problems is guys are looking at 6 full rated outlets per ton and then cranking them up to 250 CFM, and boy, you know what happens there with noise.
Yeah, you make it noisy.
Yeah. Okay.
So, again, actually, when they do the ratings, John, they only rate it at the CFM of the air handler. They're not doing it at the outlet themselves. That's the way the industry works on that. All right, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. All right, any more questions out there? I know it's a hot Friday afternoon. You guys are busy. I hope everybody's been having a profitable summer. And again, hope to see most of you guys back here at the end of the month. And we're going to have a guest speaker, Don Beckley from Sporland, which is Parker Hannafin. And be looking forward to doing that. So we're going to talk about the anatomy of a TXV. Poor TXV takes a lot of blame out there. It's rarely the fault. It's kind of that black box syndrome. They don't know what it is, therefore it's got to be causing the problem. And if any of you guys have been to my class, you know the big thing is the airflow. So if you get the airflow right, everything will go right. If you don't, that's where your problems will be. So again, I'm going to sign off here, and